Yes, I have.
Yes, I have had a sexual feeling for a platonic relationship before.
No.
Yes.
No.
I believe that personality can affect good and badly in these relationships depending on what situation happens.
I think personality kind of affects the relationship because there is, men and women that tend to have more of a stronger feeling and more of a flirty and more flirtatious way of how they go about things. So to the opposite person, they're going to feel like they want to have more of a sexual feeling around them, while the other person isn't feeling the same way. So those things can kind of affect how the relationship goes.
I think that people tend to just want to have friends in general that they have stuff in common with. So, like, probably compatible personalities. I think that, generally speaking, women tend to be friends with more women because they have more in common, and men tend to be friends with more men because they have more in common.
I think you have to be someone who doesn't constantly seek approval from the opposite gender in order to form that type of relationship.
I don't like being friends with men with strong personalities because I think they're annoying and arrogant.
To not open up to them as much as I would with other people, and to not get feelings for one another.
So when I look at myself and I remember the thoughts that I've had of sexual relationships I had in the past, relationships with other partners and stuff, and how I can kind of base it on boundaries with a platonic relationship. I kind of like to set myself aside and not open myself up as much. I kind of like to keep things at a bare minimum, keep things kind of at a distance, how people say love at a distance. That's kind of what I like to do, is not try to get too close to them, but close enough to the point where they're not feeling like they're getting shortchanged on the friendship and things are not colliding together in a negatively affected way.
I tend to kind of default on all my relationships with people being platonic. So when if I'm replaying conversation in my head and I'm like, that comment was kind of weird, it might give me pause. But my conflict style is quite avoidant, so I probably would never bring it up, and I would continue to kind of reaffirm platonic themes in our future conversations, but more subtly. I wouldn't make any kind of direct confrontation.
Through reflecting on past relationships, you kind of learn to develop a boundary of respect, because people have tended to blatantly disrespect you without realizing it in past relationships, and you kind of have to make the boundary that in platonic friendships you have to respect me, or we're not going to be friends.
Everyone has different boundaries. It's different for everyone. I feel like females are more emotionally in tune with each other, and it's easier for girlfriends to be more vulnerable with each other.
Some benefits is different views on certain situations. The guy's view could be a lot different than the girl's.
I think it's really important to have friends of opposite sex because not only does it help you kind of understand experiences from other women, but I mean, me as a man, me having female friends, when I see a lot of my friends that are females and I talk to them, I get to hear some of their stories, kind of understand how they are as a woman. And I kind of like to put it in how I want to treat a woman, because I hear good stories about how women have been treated almost amazingly, and I hear stories about how women have gotten hurt, beat, destroyed mentally, physically, and emotionally. And I like to take those experiences and kind of regulate myself so I can be the best man for the right woman and gather all the information so things kind of collide in the right way.
I think that having friends of different genders is very important in the sense that it's important to have friends of all different types of diversity. I think that diversity and variance in the people you hang around with is extremely important. You can't be like open-minded without actually in practice having friends of different types of personality types, etc. When it comes to gender specifically, I think it's great to have women as friends because it's extremely insightful. I mean, like, I've learned so much from my friendships with women, and things that I don't think many men receive if they don't have friends that are women.
I think it's important to develop friendships with people of all genders because you get to see not only how their perspective on like experiencing the world, but also how the world and society views them as a person.
Having friends within different demographic groups helps expand your perspectives on other people's feelings.
I feel like there would be a lack of boundaries, and the relationship would be very messy.
So I truly think that open relationships can be very challenging and upsetting for both parties, or maybe just one. I think that there's a lot of interference that comes with it. There could be jealousy that comes along with it. There could be boundaries that you may have set that may be voided through, personal feelings, because we're all human and we all understand development of feelings and we understand how things grow naturally. So, communication as well is very tough because me as a man, if I had a woman that were to go out and say, oh, I'm going to go hook up with this guy, we're in an open relationship, I hope that's okay. It's going to be very tough for me to trust and believe that at the end of the day, she's still coming home to me, because what if she goes out and does that and next thing you know, now our communication's slim because she's starting to gain feelings for him and losing it for me. So I feel like the interference between the two tends to really cause unsettling, disruption between the relationship.
I think it's a very interesting concept of having consensual non-monogamous relationships. It's quite rare. I think that, if it's very clear from the start, like both parties agree that it's okay and, the communication is clear, then yeah, I mean, there's no real issue. I do, however, think that achieving this is pretty rare and pretty difficult. I've had friends in polygamous relationships, polyamorous relationships, and, over time it tends to not really work out just because the boundaries are there. Like, boundaries are crossed. There's bound to be some boundaries that, are crossed because not everything has been discussed in detail.
I think being in a non-monogamous relationship definitely depends on boundaries and communication. Not that I have any experience with that, but I do know someone who's in a polyamorous relationship and they're happy. Communication and boundaries are fantastic. But I'm sure there are other people who are in similar types of relationships and the communication is just not honest, or boundaries are not perfectly set, or someone's just simply not honest about it.
In relation to open relationships, both partners should have their boundaries set and be communicating what they want, or else it won't work. It'll impact the relationship's communication skills.
I take the more calm and cooperative approach to resolving conflict because I try to avoid unnecessary conflict.
So I feel like in my romantic relationship that I have, I'm very much, I try to be very cooperative, but I know I can be very assertive as well. I do feel like as a man, I try to lay down a lot of the boundaries and making sure that things aren't being destroyed and things aren't being crossed, because I want to be able to be the man in a relationship and control things, because I come from a line of a family where the man is the one that holds down the fort and making sure that everything is to a T. But when it comes to friendship, it's a little bit different. I feel like I'm more cooperative because, especially with my friends, I just feel as if I like to just listen more and just understand where they're coming from and kind of understand how things and feelings have been affected. But at the end of it, like how conflict gets resolved, I feel like in my relationship, we tend to have a little bias between things, but it usually gets resolved. Like, I mean, it's already resolved, but after it's resolved, we tend to still kind of have a little bit of hard feelings for each other at the end of the times that we argue. But when it comes to friendship, I feel like me and my buddies tend to snap a finger, just get over it, and not even care about it, and just go about our day and have a good time. So that's kind of the difference between the two.
I've personally never really been in a romantic relationship by choice. In my friendships, I definitely I hope I'm more cooperative. But I think, assertiveness isn't a bad thing. It's good to assert like what you want in a platonic relationship, in your friendships. But I personally have been more cooperative, but I think an ideal would be a combination of the two. Like being you can be cooperative and be assertive. I don't think the two are mutually exclusive.
Personally, when I'm in conflicts, whether it's a platonic relationship or a romantic, I come across very passive aggressive. So they know exactly what I mean. They know exactly how I'm feeling, and I personally do not think it goes well. I think it puts a detriment or a strain on the relationship, but that is how I handle conflict.
In my friendships, I am more cooperative in dealing with conflicts, and in romantic relationships, I am more assertive, and both these conflicts would be resolved through communication and an understanding on both sides.
I am more calm with my significant other compared to like my friends. I'm more assertive and I tend to yell a lot more.
All right, so the way I kind of approach conflict with, for example, my girlfriend, I try to go about things very softly because I understand that women have more of a, sensitive heart. So I try to go about anything that we go through in a kind way and just try to say, hey, you know what, like, can we talk? Can we sit down and explain how we're feeling, explain how, like, our conflict is affecting us right now? And I try to just remain calm in every situation. Yes, sometimes I can get a little bit stern when I talk and maybe raise my voice a little bit, but at the end of the times, I try to be very soft about it. Now, when it comes to my buddies, I probably cuss them out almost all the time, 100% all the time. I mean, I don't go about conversations with my buddies like soft at all. Like I assert myself and try to, even though before I said, I try to be very open ears and listen. Once I hear everything and I know that maybe I'm in the right, I try to, assert my defensiveness and be able to show that, like, hey, like, you can't just walk over me. Like, I am who I am, and I'm gonna let everyone know. So,
I think that the discrepancy between platonic and romantic relationships when it comes to conflict resolution isn't that large. I think that you could probably employ similar tactics in your friendships and in your romantic relationships to come to conflict resolution. That being said, but when it comes to gender and sexual orientation, men and women think differently, typically speaking. People can think differently based on their sexual orientation, but in summation, I think you could probably approach solving conflict with your friends and solving conflict with your romantic partners very similarly. I think people tend to, probably rightfully so, care more about their romantic relationships, and you should probably put a little more effort into your romantic relationships. I think it's also important to note that, lots of romantic relationships start by you guys being friends. I wouldn't find anyone that says that they're not friends with their romantic partner. So that's why I think it's pretty similar to, you could probably just do similar things.
With men, I think I come across as more assertive, and I'll tell them exactly what they did wrong and exactly how it's feeling. Like, no questions asked, you did this. But with like female or like platonic relationships, I do come across more passive aggressive. I don't really want to like strain the relationship, but I want you to know like what you did without coming across so aggressive. But with like men or romantic relationships, I really could care less.
I feel like I do not change or use different conflict strategies based on people's gender and sexual orientation. I feel like I'm always cooperative and using active listening and communication.
I tend to communicate a lot more clearly with like my girlfriend compared to my friends, where I'm kind of more lame about it and I don't communicate as well.
So I feel like the way I communicate with my girlfriend is I trust her with my whole heart. I can tell her anything, no matter if it's personal or if it's just something funny. She's someone that I can always look up to and just, have a great conversation with. And when it does get personal, I just always know that she's an open ear and she's always willing to help me out in any aspect in any way. But when it comes to like my buddies and my friends, like it's completely different. Like there's certain things I hold back from my friends and my buddies. I would say I'm still close to them, but there's just a different aspect of trust that comes between having a woman that you grow with compared to like friends. Obviously, you've grown with too, but like friends upon friends, they talk. I'm not saying that, your girlfriend or significant other doesn't do the same, but obviously have a little bit more respect and trust for that person that you're with because, you're with them. You're learning a lot about them in a short amount of time. So I feel like I would trust my girlfriend more than anything than my friends.
I personally find it a little more difficult to open up to men. I'm not friends with many men. I'd say most of my friends are women, for reasons we don't have to get into. But I think that, I definitely manage my friendships with men and my friendships with women pretty differently when it comes to trust, when it comes to revealing things about myself. It comes pretty naturally to me with women because I've always had women as friends, and it's just for some reason always come natural to me. I am aware that this isn't the typical situation. I'm aware that usually men find it easier to share things with men, and women find it easier to share things with women, typically speaking, of course. For me, I just don't connect on an emotional level with men as well as other men do with other men. And I've always just found women to be more empathetic and caring about my emotions and my well-being. Men care in my personal experience. Men care in their own way. I don't encounter much mental stimulation in my conversations with men as I do with women. Women in my life have typically been more supportive of my ambitions, of my goals, of my emotions.
I think when you compare sharing information with female friendships versus male friendships, women tend to just like share their information, no hesitation, like it's more trusting. It's not like a big deal and we'll just like, here's the secret, like randomly. But with a relationship with a man, I feel like you very much have to like, it's awkward, less trust. You have to like sit down, make a time to like talk about something like that. And it's just a little more awkward, a little less trusting.
Friends in same gender friendships are able to share personal information better because they share an understanding and they can be more emotional with each other. And these can impact the development of trust and closeness because it improves their closeness and then they trust each other more.
With my guy friends, we tend to not think. We just say whatever comes to mind first compared to like with my significant other. I slow down and think more methodically.
So, for my buddies, the way like my mindset is when it comes to like going through any kind of conflict and navigating the conflict with them. I feel like I just speak whatever's on my mind, no matter if it's harsh or non-harsh. I just let anything free flow. But when it comes to like my girlfriend, like obviously I'm gonna tell her everything I have to say, but I kind of need to think a little bit deeper into how I'm gonna say it because, as I said, women have more of a sensitive heart, and I want to go about a conversation with her without creating that conflict to be even greater than what it is. So I try to navigate my words to be more subtle and calm, so things are understood on her end, but also in my head, I don't feel like I'm shortchanging myself in the conversation and getting what I need to say out.
I think that emotional competence is quite vital when it comes to both romantic and platonic relationships. I think that my emotional competence is pretty good. I've developed through 3 years of observation and learning what people like, learning what people don't like. I'm pretty sure I'm good at like listening. Listening is a vital part of emotional competence. And if I were to give a piece of advice to people who want to build their emotional competence, it'd be that listening is, in my opinion, the most important part. You should, in my opinion, be doing more listening than talking. And if everyone does that, you'll learn more about what people care about. And I think it will really help trust and communication.
I think emotional competence has a lot to do with empathy, especially in relation to conflicts. If you understand how another person's feelings are feeling and how your actions affect them, it makes conflicts go smoother and you can take more of a responsibility over what you've done. But if you're someone who just like will not take accountability, does not understand what you've done in a situation and just avoid it and like very defensive, that can put a strain on relationships, and especially conflicts do not get resolved.
Emotional competence impacts our ability to navigate through conflict because we are able to understand other people's feelings and not hurt their feelings.
I'm for them, and I feel like today people have accepted to the thought of cross-sex relationships.
I think that cross-gender relationships are very healthy and very good. I mean, now in a society today, I think people normalize it now, and I'm very happy that people normalize it. But for me myself, I don't mind that my girlfriend has male friends. It's perfectly acceptable to me. I know. She has people that, males that give her hugs, and, back in, earlier days, people would be a little bit more weary about that. But for me, I'm not, because I've gotten to know that person, and I've also been shown that person through my girlfriend. So with that trust that we built, it makes things a lot easier. So with just all that being said, I think everything just kind of expands greatly when you have cross-gender friends, because, it, number one, helps you elevate your mindset and understand more things. But also it doesn't shortchange yourself from allowing yourself to be friends with other people of different sex.
I think that people are definitely able to have cross-sex friendships that are very, very deep. You hear people talk about them in like familial terms, like, oh, he's a brother to me, oh, she's a sister to me. In terms of cross-sex relationships, I personally have a few friends who are women that I would describe as sister like they're like, I'm so close to them that they're like my sister. Now when it comes to how culture plays a part, I think it's improved a lot over my life, over probably the last half century. Like people like, if you think back to elementary school, like if you hung out with a girl, not even elementary school, throughout your whole life, if you hung out with someone of the opposite sex, people will you've probably encountered some teasing. You've probably encountered some people saying like, oh, like, are you guys a thing, blah blah blah. And I think, it's an interesting phenomenon because the people of opposite sexes frequently hang out as friends and then become romantically interested, but a lot of people also hang out as friends and remain friends and are friends their whole lives. One interesting phenomenon I think is our parents. I think our parents frequently, like whenever we're hanging out with someone of the opposite gender, will be like, "Oh, is this your new love interest?" And I know other people, but me personally as well. I've been like, "No, mom, no, dad. Like, this is just a very good friend of mine," and it's a little saddening actually to me that our parents can't like think of having like that kids can have like friendships of the opposite gender.
I think with cross-sex relationships, a lot of people nowadays can view them as like brotherly, sisterly kind of thing, but now more people see it as more of that. But if you were friends with someone, I don't know, however long ago, they might see it as more of like, oh, like, why don't you date them? Why don't you, like, is something going on? But there still are societal connotations, like, if you were to see me out with a guy at a bar that's just my friend, people are, oh my God, they're dating. Like, what's going on with them? Like, there's definitely still not really like a stigma, but there is a societal connotation about cross-sex friendships.
Back in the day, cross-sex friendships may have been seen as sexual relationships, but it's more normalized for cross-sex friendships to be friends, and they can be viewed as like sibling friends, like you love them like a brother or a sister, and the cultural expectations are just like more normalizing like friendships between genders.
With like my significant other, I tend to like communicate a lot more clearly and like try to bond more closely with her compared to like other friends that are girls, to where like don't communicate as clear and don't try to bond.
So the way I kind of differentiate, platonic relationships versus romantic, with my girlfriend especially, like I kind of like to keep things very like subtle and laid back when it comes to being with my girlfriend, because just my woman. Like I can do whatever I need to do with her, and there's nothing in the way of me being with her. And some of the rules kind of apply also for platonic as well, but at the end of the day, I like to be a little bit more stern when it comes to opposite sex relationships, like as friends. And I try not to engage myself too much with them. I try to keep things at a bare minimum, conversations, hanging out. I try not to do one-on-one time. I like to, if I'm gonna hang out with the opposite sex, I want to be in a group, and I want to know that my girlfriend knows that woman. So I like to basically go about things in a very different road, so that person that I'm in a platonic relationship with doesn't feel like I'm either flirting with them or trying to get into something sexually romantic with them.
For me, it has been extremely easy in my life to maintain platonic relationships, because all the relationships in my life have either been my familial relationships, like my mom, my dad, my brother, or platonic relationships. I've never in my life thought of any of my relationships as something other than platonic. I do know that this is very rare and people don't typically think like this. When it comes to other people and their romantic relationships and their platonic relationships, I think the first part is to determine what kind of relationship it is. This comes with communication. This comes with, high emotional competence. And then I think, you should be putting effort into all your relationships. But if you're romantically interested in someone, if you're romantically involved with someone, you should probably be putting a little more effort into that relationship. And I think everyone kind of thinks this way. I think it's a pretty common, thought process.
I think with platonic relationships, especially like low maintenance friendships, it takes a lot less to manage and keep up with the relationship. As long as you're sending like a, hey, I haven't seen you in a while, let's catch up kind of text, and making sure you're in tune with what's going on with them, you can manage that relationship and it can be healthy. But with romantic relationships, it definitely takes a lot more effort. Like if you don't text them for a day, that's usually going to lead to an issue in a romantic relationship. But like with friendships, you don't necessarily need to talk to them every day. It could be months.
I think that both platonic and non-platonic relationships both require boundaries and communication, but different levels of understanding towards each other, as well as different levels and types of intimacy.